Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. Part number 38 of the build tutorial series. And let me say, starting out on this video here, I'm having a blast. I think I've had more fun modeling this weekend and doing these videos. And just, I feel that, there's a lot of people that are very interested in the series, and a lot of people that were looking forward to me doing this. And it has just been a pleasure and a whole lot of fun to sit down and do a box stock model and just enhance it a little bit and do it all on video and show you guys, give you some pointers to the seasoned guys out there, and also help out the younger builders, the people that's just getting into the hobby. It's just been a blast, and I thank you all, you guys that have come in and really supported and commented on the videos and had a big interest in it. It's just been great. So next we're going to move on to something that a lot of people have a lot of issues with. There's several different ways you can do this. This is my technique on doing it. Works very well for me personally. You may be able to take some of these, steps that I do and tweak them and make them your own. So what we're talking about is the flocking part of this. And what we're going to be doing as far as doing simulated carpet is the footwells right here and along the console, the bottom edge of the console, back here to this panel that kicks up, and you'll see a line right here. Let me see if I can get up here a little bit closer. There's a line that I drew on right there. Now, that line is there for a reason. And this is a little pointer for, not only beginners that's starting to do bare metal foil, or the intermediate guys, even you seasoned guys. This is a little trick that I learned a while ago. A lot of times what I'd do in the past is I would come in and, knowing that this all needs to be carpet, I would do this whole entire panel. Well, what you end up running into is when you go to fit your side panels the way these go together, you've got a raised portion of your flocking that's going to sit underneath of your glue joint. And the problem with that is not necessarily the gluing of it, it spaces the panel up too far. So what I like to do is, in the case of this model and the way that it's designed to go together, I will come in with the interior panel, set it into position where it goes, and then I will take a pencil and I will mark along that interior panel. And what I'm doing that for is that tells me that when I do the painting procedure to put the flocking down, I will paint right to where I cover that line up. And that way I'm not getting any flocking that goes under this panel. So we'll have a good glue joint and we'll be all the way down like we need to be. So I'm going to take the other panel, the passenger side panel, and I'm going to set it into place. I haven't marked this side yet, just to show you how I go about doing this. And I will set it down on the pins where it's supposed to go when it's done. And I may have to spin this around here so I can hold it and mark it at the same time. So that panel, when it's finished, is going to go in that position right there. So I'm going to take the pencil and I'm going to very lightly come down here on the floor pan, and I'm going to make a mark all the way to the back. And we pull that back out. And as you can see, we have two marks on that floor pan. That's as far as we want to go with our flocking. And let everybody know, there's our wood graining that we did. It's all drying up now, looking real good. You can tell the sheens are about all the same. It's looking nice. You can see the black shadow that we put around it. Real happy with that. So anybody that followed along with that procedure, give it a try, practice a little bit with it. And if you have any questions or whatever, or you need some help, or you get kind of stumped on a step of it, let me know, and we'll be more than glad to do another video and show you that part you're having problems with. So what we're going to do now is my procedure on applying flocking to a model car or a model truck project. And like I say, this is not something that's set in stone. You don't have to do it this way. This is just my procedures and what works for me here at Showtime Studios. So what I'm doing now is I'm picking out a brush here. I'm going to use a brush. This is a, I don't even know what size this is. What is this brush? This is an O. Okay, we got a single O. Not a very big brush. So we're going to have a brush. The next thing that I recommend you get, and you can pick these up at Walmart, these are a tea strainer. I think that's what they're for. Sandy picked these up. I think they're like $1 a piece, and they're just a wire mesh ball is all they are. They got a little clasp here on the side of it that holds it together, and it works real good for doing flocking work. And what I'll do is I originally was going to use that. Let me get it here. I was going to use this more rose-colored, lavender-colored flocking for the carpet. And the more that I looked at the model and kind of held this into position, I didn't really like the color of it. So I decided to go to one of my lighter colors. This is from Detail Master, and this is more of like their buff color. And as you can see, it's real close to the racing white that we put on here. So this is what we're going to use for this little bit of flocking that we're doing to simulate carpet in this build. And what I do is just take the package, and you just want to dump a little bit into the ball. And you can put a little bit of extra in here if you want to, just in case, so you don't have to stop and go back and, fill it back up again. And we'll put the cap back on that. And then we're just going to swing the lid of this over, and we're going to go ahead and seal that up, and we're going to set it over here to the side. And I'll show you why that works and how that works when we get there. Now, the next thing that we want to do is some people will go in with white glue and do this. Some people will use paint to do it. Some people use clear. The white glue technique, I tried it, and I don't really like it because it tends to be a little bit bulky for my taste, but it does work. It does hold the fibers of the flocking. But what I like to use is, believe it or not, an enamel product. This is a color called wood. If I can get it to zoom in here. There we go. It's a Model Master enamel, and it's color wood. And it's just a, a lighter brown color. Now, what I would recommend on this is whenever you're doing a flocking, you want to try to get the base color. If you're going to use my technique, get the base color as close to the flocking as you can. This is going to be a little bit darker, which is fine because in this car, everything is going to be in the shadows on the interior anyway. So no big deal when it comes to that. I've already shook this up. I just pulled the cap off of it here. And what we want to do is we want to come in, and this is something that you have to, really keep going and pay attention to what you're doing during this whole process to make it work and work well for you. Now, remember, we have to glue the seats in here, but they do have this raised panel all the way around. So we're going to go ahead and run the flocking in as close to that as we can. If you get it within about 60 thousandths, that's the thickness of the plastic that's going to sit down here. So you'll be good. You don't actually have to do underneath of the seat. You can go around it. You don't really need to do all of that part. In fact, on this model, you would not have to do between the edge of the seat and the console. And we may not do that on this one because when you set the seat in place up against that console, there is no way that you're going to see down in this model and tell that there's no flocking right through this area. So, kind of look at those things as you're going along and get a game plan ahead of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to dip the brush into our wood colored enamel. And we're going to start out here in the center of the panel. And we want to get this enamel up very, very close to our console and whatever else we want to put flocking on. So this is where you need a steady hand, and this is where, using a brush and getting some experience with a brush comes in handy because it will allow you to cut that line in real cleanly around there. And like I say, I'm not gonna go back in this little recess here because you're not going to see it. If there is a chance that you can see that, make sure that you do go back in that recess. We're going to get another brush load of paint here. And remember now we're getting over to this line that we marked on there. We're going to go ahead and drag it right down that line just so that we're covering up the line. And you don't want to get the paint too thick, but you want to make sure that you keep the surface wet. You don't want the paint film to dry out, because what will happen is it will not grab the fibers of the flocking, and you will get parts where the flocking will not stick to the paint. So try to thin it out where you don't have a lot of ups and downs and real heavy spots in it. And sometimes you have to brush back over it a little bit to be able to do that. And we've got flocking around the corner here. Now what we're going to do, now if you get a little bit past this line, ain't no big deal. Don't worry about it. You're not going to see that. Just don't get too much back in there that it lifts up the panel. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the flocking ball. That's what I call this. And it's a screen on both sides. We're just going to tap it with our finger. And that's going to allow the fibers, the very fine fibers, to drop out onto the surface. And I know I've got the ball right over top of what we're doing here, but I'll show you what's going on as soon as I get all the fibers out the way that I want it. Okay, there we go. Now we have the fibers laying on the surface. And let me hold it up here and show you what kind of a mess it looks like when you're doing this procedure. There we go. You can see the fibers laying down on there. Now what I do is I just kind of let that sit for a little bit. You can come in, there's one of two ways to do this. You can come in with your finger and press it down a little bit, or you can come in with a wider flat brush and very carefully come in and just kind of push the fibers into that enamel paint. And this will change the color of the carpet a little bit because I did not match the tone of the paint to the actual flocking. But that's fine. We'll see what it comes out like. It should be a pretty decent color. And you don't want to push this down until you see paint squeezing up through the flocking, because if you go that far, you've actually went too far and you've messed up, and you will definitely see that. So now we have that all tucked down into the paint. The next thing that I do is I will turn that upside down, and you'll see some drop off there. I'll take the hobby knife or something like that and just tap the underside of the panel. Not real hard. And then what we'll end up with is the flocking that comes out like that. Now that will dry up. Everything will look pretty decent. It gives you that, texture of carpeting. And in fact, if you don't put a lot of this stuff down, it'll give you about the same texture that they had cast in here originally. So, and if you want to get a little bit more off, you can just come in and tap it again, just to get all the excess off. Now we're going to set it down, and we got this little area here behind the seat that we want to take care of. And actually in that area, you would not have to do that either, because you're not going to be able to see it. But we're going to go ahead and cut that in back there. So we're going to go back to our console, and then we're going to slide straight across. Now we're doing a little bit of blending here. You remember we went around the corner and we stopped right there. What we want to do is blend that in. So you want to drag your paint up to the very edge of the color that's down there. And I'm dragging the paint against this vertical panel back here. And then when you get out here where you want to blend this together, just pull it right up to the edge of where you left off. And another little tip that I should have said when I was putting this down to begin with, the straighter that you get that line when you leave off, knowing that you have to start up at another point, try to get that line as straight as you can, because then all you have to do is come right straight up to a straight line, and you're not trying to blend in and go around, curves and stuff like that. And while you're doing all that, your paint's drying up on you and won't hold the flocking right. So we have that paint down. Now we're going to go back in, same procedure. We're going to hold the ball over top of the wet paint. Just tap the top of it. And another thing you can do is you can take that hobby knife if you want to, and you can tap it that way. The fibers will still fall out just like they did before. You can actually hold it like this and tap the rim of the ball, whichever way you want to do it. I usually just use my finger on it and tap the ball. Works pretty good. Okay, we got that covered in. We're going to go back over to our wider brush now. We're going to push the fibers down into the wet paint. Okay, we've got all that. Now we're going to turn it upside down. And we're going to come in, tap it again. And we'll hold it up here and let you see how it came out. Let me find the camera here. You can see where we just went back over that part back in the back. Hasn't quite dried yet. But if you look at the front, you can tell that we're starting to get that texture that we're looking for. Looks real good. Now, the other thing that I did not mention that I should have, as far as your flocking, if you do this on a piece of paper, I should have told you that to begin with. I apologize for that. I'm just going to take this piece of sandpaper here. If you put a piece of paper down underneath of what you're flocking, when you tap this off, this excess off, you can pick that back up and put that back into your container and save it for the next time. Now, that saves you a little bit of money and a little bit of material. And we're not going to do the other side of the floor right now. That's how you do it. I'm going to clean up the brush here. I've got some Testors brush cleaner that I'm going to clean the brush out with. Get that out of there. Just so I don't forget it, ruin my brush, because I'm bad for that. I ruin brushes all the time. That's why I said I don't buy expensive brushes, because I know I'll just ruin them. Okay, so we've got that cleaned up now. And like I say, when you start doing your flocking, make sure you put a piece of paper down underneath of this, because when you tap all this off, you can take that piece of paper, you can fold it, make like a little funnel out of it, and you can pour it right back into your container. Whether it's Ken's Fuzzy Fur or this Detail Master, the containers are big enough. You just make a tight little funnel on the paper, and it'll slide right back in here. Now, in the ball, you will notice that there's a lot of flocking left in there. Now, sometimes what you'll run into, you will notice as you're going along and you're tapping on the ball, it'll stop coming out. And usually when that happens, that means that you've got all of these very small fibers already out of there. And what's left is fibers that won't transfer through these little holes in the screen. And let me see if we can get a shot of it here. You can see just how small them holes are in that screen. And that's why, doing this technique works real well and keeps you into scale for the most part, because the holes are so small. So the fibers that are hitting the model are only big enough to get through these little holes. So that's something else to remember. And when it stops coming out of here, I pretty much take that and dump it back into the container and shake all that up and blend it back in, and then dump it back in here again. You'll have it mixed in with new fibers, and it'll eventually get to the point where you'll dump the flocking into the ball, and you'll start tapping on it and nothing comes out. That flocking is done. Throw it away. Now another technique that some people do, and I'll show you over here on the side that we do not have paint on, and you can try this and see if it works for you. I personally don't like it myself, but they'll go ahead and put down either their white glue or their paint or whatever they're using to adhere the flocking, and then they will take the flocking and just kind of dump it out like that and push it down. Now you can do the same thing, but what I found out is it kind of leaves lumps in it, and I don't really like that, because you've got all different sizes of fibers being adhered into the glue or into the paint, and it gets kind of blotchy and bulky looking. But if you do it where it's coming through this ball, you've only got the same size fibers coming out, all the time. So you don't get that blotchiness and that bulky effect to it. So that's what we have as far as flocking. And like I say, this is my way to do it. It's not necessarily the only way to do it. It works for me. I like how the results come out. And that's that. And what I'll do is there's another little trick that once this dries a little bit, we're going to come in with the airbrush, and I'll show you another little trick to blend this in and make it look real nifty. So stay tuned for that one. Again, any questions or concerns on flocking technique, leave me a comment, let me know, ask a question, and we'll be more than glad to help you out with that. So until next time, this is Hunter from Showtime Studios, and I thank you for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.